Hello and welcome to another home run edition of Pittsburgh Sports Memories. I'm your co-host Steve Wirt, and as usual, I'm joined by,
Hi, I'm Tim Hannon.
and like every episode's a home run, but there aren't a lot of strikeouts. So, but we're definitely going to hit this one out of the park, like this guy did. He had a lot of them, literally out of the park, like literally out of the stadium, Tim. That would be a man called Pops, and if you don't know who that is, that would be Willie Stargell. A great quote to start off with is this is Willie Stargell talking about Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh isn't a fancy town, but it's real. It's a working town, and money doesn't come easy, and they don't warm up to quick turnovers. They want a guy to be around. And stick around, he did. He only ever played for the Pirates, never played for anybody else. No, going to Seattle for a last hurrah or something like that. Nope, he stuck with the Pirates, and he stuck a 20-year baseball career. That is a long run. Later in his career, he really became a leader, especially that 79 series. He became known as Pops. And it wasn't, you would think, oh, Pops is kind of derogatory. But no, it was like a term of affection for them, not infection. That would be weird.
Got the
Affection.
pops again.
Yeah, oh
Oh,
no.
got to take some
Oh,
antibiotics for that.
oh man, I was really hoping they come up with a vaccine for that. More importantly, he was a leader off the field also. He gave to charity and he endeared himself to the people of Pittsburgh, and he left a legacy that, quite honestly, of his character that probably people remember more than any of his home runs. So, without further introduction, we'll go. Where was he born? He was born in Earlsboro, Oklahoma. I have no idea where that is except for in Oklahoma. But he did move around a lot when he was younger until he finally settled with his mother in Oakland, California. Some places say Alameda. I think Alameda and Oakland are kind of the same place. Um, like I said, he spent all of his career with the Pirates. And when he first came up, he played left field. He was not the greatest fielder of all time, but he did at the end of his career, as he kind of lost his legs a little bit, he moved to first base. He was definitely a feared home run hitter. And he had this remember his wind up, Tim? Do you remember that? Like he had that
Mhm.
cool like windmill, like he'd move the bat like around in a very over exaggerated circular motion. Like it was just, it was pretty cool.
It fit him because he was this like big towering guy, and it looked
Yeah.
like the bat was just like this little plaything that he was just kind of like winding around and come on, throw me a ball. I'm just warming myself up. It
Yeah.
just it fit that fit him better than it would have like a guy that was like 5'8", and small.
Tim
You know what I mean?
Foley or Omar Moreno. He
Yeah,
wasn't.
yeah. It just wouldn't have looked as natural. But with him, it was just like, oh, got this bat, got this. I'm ready to go. There was something very distinct about it. And when I was a kid, you and I talked about this, I think, on the show before. When I was a kid, I used to always imitate batting stances and batting styles whenever I played baseball. And so when guys had like a distinct uh, routine like that at the plate, I when I was such a baseball fan as a kid, I'm sure other kids probably did the same thing. You would imitate that. It was just
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, much like, Julio Franco and whatever the heck he was doing up there. And but yeah, I
Yep.
remember like oftentimes when I was a child, like just like going out in the backyard playing with a ball and like, I'm Willie Stargell, I'm gonna hit a home run, and then I'd swing and miss. much much like Willie Stargell did a lot too, but he hit home runs in big spots. Did you remember he threw the last pitch at Three River Stadium? That was a pretty emotional moment. I think was that 2000? I think
Yeah, it
so.
would have been like
Yeah,
October of
October.
2000. Yeah.
Yeah, and he was really kind of like in poor health at that point. Like, it was really, really cool to see him do that. So we'll start with some iconic home runs. Um, I've never been to Dodger Stadium, but it looks like a cool place to go. And he actually hit two home runs out of Dodger Stadium. I think he might have hit more than that actually. But the two they have are 470 feet and 507 feet. And he literally, I think he hit one off like a facade or something, like a scoreboard. And then the other one actually went clear out of the stadium.
Hmm.
Like 507 feet is just unheard of. Like, especially in the 70s, like people just did not hit the ball that far. Maybe it's become a little more commonplace, but I mean that's just a crazy home run. And the fact that like, and you're gonna notice this throughout here, like the Dodgers, like I'll have some videos and stuff. We'll post them to our website, but the Dodgers actually part of like I think the 50-year or 60-year celebration of Dodger Stadium actually included this in their like stadium like montage, like the Dodgers did. That's how like impressive those hits were, and the respect they have for Willie Stargell.
Yeah,
In 1979, the Pirates were playing the NLCS Championship Series against the Reds, and we haven't really gone over this a terrible amount, but during the 70s, the Pirates just could not beat the Big Red Machine. They were pretty unstoppable. Like the Pirates lost at least three or four times to them. And in this game, it was a 3-game series this year, and in the first game, he hit an 11th inning home run, and this was in Cincinnati, so it is in Riverfront, and it gave the Pirates a 5-2 lead, and that they ended up winning that game. And the Pirates would actually go on to sweep the Reds in 3 games. So they actually only got to play one game in Three River Stadium. So
yeah, and that's like another good example of, yeah, just I guess anytime you have an iconic player like this, what did they do? What did they do in the big moments, right? And you're going to get into what happens, in the next series, and that's really where he makes his mark.
yeah, yeah, and that whole like 79 season, like he had actually dropped off a couple years before. I think in 77 he only had 13 home runs, but he still had an average of 274. But then that's 78 and 79. Even the year before, he batted, let's see, 78, 295. And then in 79, he ended up batting 281. And he had a big resurgence. Those 2 years, 78, he hit 28 home runs, 79, he hit 32. And like he had this late career. I think he was in his late 30s, I think. He was like 36 to 38. So he was not young at this point. He had been around. That's towards the end of his career. So, I mean, it's pretty impressive that he was able to pull that off.
That's a good point that no one really ever brings up, is that his peak, a lot of people think of his peak as that 79 season, and that's, like you said, that's the very end of his career. Like that's not his prime, right?
Oh, no, for sure. Like, and you look at the seasons after that, I'm looking at the 80, 81, 82. I mean, he didn't hit any home runs in 81. He only played in 38 games, so I mean, after that 79 season, he didn't play more than 100 games the rest of his career. So I get the feeling, he got hurt and, the seasons caught up to him. I'm trying to look his best pro season. Uh, Maybe 66 he batted, or no, 65. He batted 315 one year, and he had 33 home runs. So for him, like he was not a guy that hit for average. He hit for power and RBIs. He had over 100 RBIs there in the middle 60s. So he definitely was an RBI and home run guy, not an average guy. But I could live with that if he's going to hit as long as he's hitting like 275, 280 and bringing in like 80 to 100 RBIs, you're
Mm-hmm.
okay. I
Right.
can live with the strikeouts. And a big reason is like he was very clutch too. And I know like, this is I think where sometimes like the sabermetrics people like, oh, there is no such thing as clutch. Well, there really is because in the seventh game of a series, if you go 0 for 3, but you had like all these great hits going up to that game, what does it really matter? The point is to win the series and win the game. And I think, if you're looking, that's where sometimes the statistics they work better over a whole season, but in a short series, maybe they don't tell the whole picture because there aren't as much, once again, your sample size is probably a little bit too small.
Well, contrast, the last the as of the time of this recording, the two most recent times that the Pirates were in the National League Championship Series was 79 and the 1990 through 92. So think about Barry Bonds, right?
Yeah, he
Great home
never
run
had a great
hitter.
off season. Yeah.
Yeah, great home run hitter, great player. But he wasn't clutch. You don't need stats to tell you that. You knew you watching those series against the Braves and the Reds, he did not come through for the Pirates, and Willie Stargell did. So you're right. There is such a thing as clutch, and it matters because, and like I said, going back to like what really makes a guy iconic is did he win you a championship, and that's what really made Stargell was that whole 79 season and into the postseason.
Yeah, he was on the 71 team that won a World Series, but he really like I looked he really stunk. That 71 series he did not do much of anything. That was kind of more Clementi's. It's kind of like weird. You could do 71 was definitely Clemente and Blas, and this was definitely, Willie Stargell and Kent DeCalvi. And I guess Candelaria was a pretty good their big starter. But someday we'll do a whole podcast on the 79 World Series. We really should.
Yeah, for sure.
Since we were both alive, at least that's the one we were both alive for that, right,
We
Tim?
were very
I've
young, but we were
yeah,
there.
yeah. I was alive. Um he was That's 79. He was part of the Lumber and Lightning Pirates. He actually won in that season. He won NL MVP. I think him and Barry Bonds are they the last two to win the NL MVP? Or no, McCutcheon, yeah,
Yeah.
won it too. So, and they won a World Series MVP, obviously, for the reason that in 79 the Pirates are losing, I think 1-0. Moore had a pitcher named Scott McGregor. Did he have a glove? I swear I had a baseball glove that had like his name in it or something, or I don't know. But anyway, so Scott McGregor in the sixth hangs I don't know, it was a fastball or curveball, and Willie Stargell just absolutely hammers it to right field, and that's the iconic video of the guy hanging on the fence while Howard Cosell cries in his Baltimore jersey, I guess. Once again, more stuff will link on the website. You can check it out. Um, he for that season, like I said, he hit 32 home runs, had 82 RBIs, and he batted 281. Which like I said, if you can get him between 281, like keep him out of the cellar of like the 200s and 220s, you're doing Willie's contributing well. So now he hit upper deck home runs. Now these are just home runs that he hit like super long. Like apparently Forbes Field had an 86-foot right field fence because I think right field was kind of short. Of the only 18 balls ever from 1909 to 1970 were ever hit over it. Willie Stargell hit 7 of them. So almost half of the home runs that went out to right field. You figure how many more, like they always say that about like who is it that played in Candlestick? Willie Mays. Like if Willie Mays would have played somewhere else, how many more home runs would he had? Like if Willie Stargell wouldn't have played in Forbes Field for all those years, how many more home runs would he have had?
Well, yeah, that's why like baseball, you can't just look at stats. You have to look at eras and what was happening at the time and the context. So number one, like you said, he plays the first almost decade of his career in Forbes Field, which is really tough to hit home runs in. And then
Well, Barney Dreyfuss didn't like cheap home runs,
he didn't like cheap home runs.
and
That's
Willie
right.
Stargell didn't hit cheap home runs. That's for sure.
The other thing that you have to consider, and Steve, I'm sorry if I'm stealing your thunder here if you were going to talk about this, but the, people didn't hit a lot of home runs in that era. During Willie Stargell's career, there was only two guys that had 50 home run seasons. It was Willie Mays in '65, and then George Foster in '77. And that was it. His whole 21-year career, there's only two guys that hit 50 home runs. And if you look at
Hank
like
Aaron didn't. I thought Hank Aaron like always hit 40 every year.
yeah, Hank Aaron never hit 50 home runs. It wasn't until Cecil Fielder in 1990, and then that kicked off a whole wave of people in the
Yeah.
90s and the steroid era. But like there was a long time where nobody really hit a ton of home runs, and remember too that a big part of that was the roles were favored towards pitching, and you had these guys, and they were like I feel like probably not all of them were in the National League, but it felt like a lot of them were because you had Bob Gibson like mowing people down, like they literally had to like what was it lower the pitching mound
Hmm.
because Bob Gibson was just too dominant. You had Koufax, you had Steve Carlton, you had Tom Seaver, you had Nolan Ryan. Like Willie Stargell had to bat against all those guys.
Would you ever hear Stargell's quote about trying to hit Sandy Koufax?
No.
It's like trying to eat soup with a fork.
Nice. Nice. I like that. That makes a lot of sense. But that's what I mean. You had this era. It's kind of like the NFL trying to measure, Lynn Swan and John Stallworth's receiving stats in an era where, Jack Tatum could like, grab your helmet and throw you down on the ground before
Yeah.
the ball ever got there, right? It's not going to be the same as, Justin Jefferson today, right? So the I feel like Stargell was so hampered by all those things, and the fact that he put up the numbers he did makes it even that much more impressive.
Well, yeah, that's what's crazy is like he played in like kind of like the multi-purpose state like in the 60s. I guess there were some weird stadiums like I don't know if I don't think he ever played in the Polo Grounds. He was after that. But even like Yankee Stadium was like 500 feet to dead center or something ridiculous. But he never played in that American League Stadium. But like once again, Candlestick was always tough to hit because of the wind. I mean, I guess he did go to Wrigley fairly, but if the wind's blowing in Wrigley, it's harder to hit a home run there than if it's blowing out. Busch Stadium was always another pitcher's ballpark.
Yeah.
I always thought Busch Stadium was. Riverfront was kind of the same as Three Rivers, and same thing with the Vet. So another stadium that, well, this I don't think the stadium exists anymore. I'm pretty sure it doesn't. Olympic Stadium. Do you remember the Montreal Expos, Tim, at all, ever?
Yes.
Hey, they
Yes.
played baseball in Montreal there way
Tim
back when.
Raines, Dennis Martinez, Tim
Yeah.
Wallach. Who else? Hubie Brooks. That's the Expos I remember.
They have Andres Galarraga at one point.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Pete Rose played there very temporarily, if you remember that.
No, I don't remember. Wow, I didn't.
Yeah,
That's a good one.
yeah. Go
Well,
look up Pete Rose in an Expos uniform and you'll
in
find pictures.
so in 1976, the Montreal got the Olympics, and I can't. Did we boycott that one? No,
No, that was 1980
80. Yeah, yeah,
because it was
in
because
Russia.
yes,
Yeah,
right, exactly.
I think 1976 was. No, what one did they have gymnastics? Is that the summer? I can't
Yeah,
remember.
yes.
I don't know if it was the summer or the Winter Olympics that year, but whatever.
The 76, are you thinking of the
Montreal, would that have been the summer or the Winter
that would
Olympics?
yeah, that would have you want to say winter because it's Canada.
But I think it was
But
summer,
I
yeah.
think it was the summer
So that
because
would have been Nadia Comaneci's perfect
yes,
10 then.
you got
Yes,
it.
that's where I
Right.
was going with that.
Right.
Well, a home run that was a perfect 10
Oh,
was Willie Stargell hitting a home run in the upper deck. And you say, big deal, people hit home runs in the upper deck. No, this is the only one that was ever fair in the upper deck of Olympic Stadium. So Olympic Stadium is a weird stadium. When they built it, now do you remember this, Tim? When they first built it, there was like it was like the old Texas stadium where there was an opening in the roof.
Mhm.
And then for years, it was just like that. And then finally, one year, they just like closed it. It was like the oddest stadium I remember in baseball. It,
I don't remember that. That's interesting. I don't remember the hole in the roof.
I remember the hole in the roof for years. And then, like, somewhere in the 80s, they just like closed it. Like, oh, okay, I guess we're going to finish it now. Guess they weren't consider, worried about God watching the Expos playing or no. But Willie hit a ball up in the upper deck, and we have some pictures of that. We'll post them to our website also. There's a seat that it actually hit a seat, like I would say run row back in the upper deck, and that has to be like a 500-foot home run, and it's crazy. And when you see the picture, you'll understand a little more. But once again, like, and it's so iconic. Once again, like how the Dodgers remember it, like when they obviously the Expos moved to Washington in the 90s, and I think they tore down Olympic Stadium. So they saved the seat, and it's in the Canadian Baseball Hall of Fame. So
Wow.
go figure.
Wow, that's impressive. I just that's the fact that like other teams
Yeah.
have like commemorated home runs that Willie Stargell hit.
And
I
this
mean,
isn't,
where
yeah,
else do you see that?
I haven't even covered them all yet. Yeah, and Jerry Park, which was a predecessor to Olympic Stadium, which was and now this is just a brilliant idea to Tim. How about let's build an outdoor stadium in Montreal, Canada, an outdoor baseball stadium in Montreal. That should be great in April when the season starts in April. Because like it's still literally probably snowing in April in
Yeah, yeah.
Montreal.
Well, they're Canadians. They'll play in the weather.
But
They're
yeah,
used to it.
he hit a home run once again in right field, all the way into a swimming pool that was beyond the right field fence. So
Wow.
that was another mammoth shot. Um, if I now we've talked about this before in Three River Stadium, 4 out of the first 5 home runs in the upper deck of that stadium were hit by Willie Stargell, and I still contend that he might have hit one across the river at PNC Park, but apparently physics is against me, as one of our astute listeners has pointed out. But
Yes.
I'm not one to let facts get in the way of a good story. So
Hey, I mean, it could have happened. We'll never know. We'll just say that.
yeah, we'll never. Not true. We'll never know. But still an impressive feat. And I remember there was a they had them numbered too. Remember that, Tim? Like, because one hit
Yeah.
like the front of the 600 level, one hit a seat because there used to be a seat with a number on it where he hit one of his home runs. So it was really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. For those of you that might not remember Three River Stadium in baseball games, the hitting a home run into the upper deck of Three River Stadium was like this special event, right? It was like a huge deal if anybody did that.
Yeah.
Even when a guy for the opposition, like I remember real late in the stadium's history, I think like who was the guy for the Cardinals? It was like Ray Langford or somebody like that hit one up there, and
I
that
think
was a
Greg
big deal.
Luzinski hit one up there from the Phillies.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
even when an opposing player did it, it was like this huge big deal, and Willie Stargell did that multiple times.
Yeah, one to the seats, like not just hit off the front, of the railing. It was in the seats. Like even hitting one into the red seats out in right field was that was quite a shot there. So then in Philadelphia, if we remember, Veterans Stadium, Three River Stadium, and Riverfront were all kind of the same stadium, much like has happened again, where Citizens Bank Park, PNC Park, and whatever that what's the I don't know the name of the Riverfront Park or whatever the park the Reds play. They've changed the name like
Great
6 times.
American or something. I
Yeah, I think they've changed the name again.
corporate name this
Yeah,
year, baseball
yeah,
stadium. Yes.
in Cincinnati. Like they
Yeah.
all kind of look very similar.
Hmm.
Not complete. It's not as bad as when you had Three Rivers, Riverfront, and the Vet. They
The,
looked almost exactly the same, but
yeah, go watch like an old Steeler game or something in Riverfront, the only thing that will tell you the difference is like, are the Steelers wearing white jerseys or black jerseys?
Yeah.
That's really the only way you can tell the difference of where they're playing.
Yeah. So in he had an upper deck home run into the section 601 in the vet in Philadelphia. And it wasn't just like this wasn't another one that just made it. It's like there's like a how would you call it? Like a walk, like the entrance way to the upper deck. Is that what you
Mhm.
would call it, Tim?
Yeah, where you
And
like came out of the concourse to like go to
yeah.
your seats. Is that what you're
And he
saying?
hit like the upper part of that entrance way.
Wow,
Yeah. That's
that's insane.
and it was so far like the Phillies marked it with an S. So once again, another the even the rival Phillies respected that one. And it funny, Larry Boa, who would eventually, I think he managed the Phillies for a while.
He did.
He said it would take me 3 swings to get one up there, and he said from second base. So Larry Boa was duly impressed.
That's a good
And it's
quote.
funny that that home run was hitting off. It was hit off a guy named Jim Bunning, who actually was a future U.S. senator from and House rep from Kentucky. I don't know if he passed any resolutions about Willie Stargell in the House, but maybe he should have.
That should have been a campaign commercial for whoever was running against him.
Yeah,
Kim Bunning thinks he can resolve our border crisis, but he can't let Willie Stargell not take him, way down into the upper deck.
so that's there's some fun stuff there with Willie. Unfortunately, Willie grew up in the 50s and 60s, and there were some racial things that happened to him. And when he was playing minor league ball in Plainview, Texas, he was actually threatened by a fan with a gun before the game. And I remember seeing interviews with him, like looking over his shoulder, like somebody said, "If you hit a home run today, you're gonna like die or something." Like people were
Wow.
crazy. Now people still are crazy. They're not were. There's no were in that. But he couldn't like. Also, he played in New Mexico. He couldn't get served for dinner in that town. Like there was only one restaurant that would serve people, and it was out of the back door. So he would just go to the grocery store and make his own stuff. And also, when he was in the minors, he had the funnily he had to stay with like they couldn't stay in a hotel because of course no African Americans were allowed to stay in hotels in the South. So like they had to stay with like other African Americans in town that would just put them up in their house. And he stayed with some lady who grew her own bait in her house. And it's like she had all the windows like nailed shut. And he said it smelled absolutely horrible. I can't imagine like all those worms and whatever else, like bugs, and that had to be pretty gross.
Yeah, how often do you go fishing that you're growing your own bait? Unless that was
Well,
a
I think
business,
she was
maybe.
selling it. I
Okay,
think that was
okay.
her business.
I see.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, that's understandable. But I mean, how absurd it is that, I think it's weird when you think about that wasn't that long ago that stuff was happening, what you just described. It really wasn't.
Well,
I mean, that was
yeah, I
almost
think that
into our
was,
lifetimes.
yeah, I mean, I wasn't alive, but my parents were.
Sure.
So, he did some charity and he was a pretty humble guy. He worked to fight sickle cell anemia, which is a disease that uh, causes your red blood cells to sickle and causes you terrible cramps and pains and can cause death. Ryan Clark has it. His sister actually passed away from it. It mainly affects African Americans. It's a genetic disease. So he worked extensively with that community, and actually flew into Vietnam war zones to visit soldiers. So, in an unpopular war, but at least he still supported the soldiers. So, good guy all around. He would do the tour of the schools and youth groups and talk about the dangers of substance abuse. And part of him just being Willie and being humble was somebody asked him about he was having a good day hitting home runs, and he said, "Well, am I swinging where they are throwing, or are they throwing where I am swinging?" So it just kind of deferential humor there.
Yeah, that's interesting about the Vietnam thing. I never knew that. That's
Well, I guess he was part of a group of larger people, but he still went and still visited, and that was an unpopular war. So
Yeah, yeah, and that's like again, um, times being different. Uh, that would be very common today, supporting the troops and bringing out the
Not back
troops at a
then, yeah.
game. And yeah, not back then. No, it wasn't. So kudos to him for kind of being at the forefront of that, and recognize. And I don't know what his views were on the war itself, right? But kudos to him for being able to have the nuance to say, regardless of whether or not I think this war is right. These people fighting it, it's not their decision, so they deserve our support.
So, in also his leadership, he was very, known for his leadership. In '79, like we mentioned, he came up with the idea to help the team. I guess the team wasn't getting along, and they're in fourth place. And you had a lot of personalities like Dave Parker and Jim Rooker, and and so to bring the team together and get people, all on the same page. I guess there was a rain delay, and they played the Sister Sledge song "We Are Family," and he called up and said, "Hey, what's the name of that song?" Because he didn't have whatever on his phone that he could tell him.
The app that tells you what, yeah,
Yeah,
what song it is.
so he just he called up and he said, "Hey, that's going to be our song for the season," and it worked. It got them to play together, and they went all the way to a World Series win. That big. You got to back it up too. That's the thing. You just can't say stuff, but definitely he had a great season, hitting them 28 home runs and doing all that. And once again, another example of his humility. When he received the World Series award, he stated that I know only one person can win the award, but if I would divide it among the entire organization. So, and really that we've talked about that before in our traditions podcast, that we are families become kind of like the I would say like the theme song of that '79 season and that team. So
Oh yeah, it's iconic now. Whenever people, you can't have like a anything mentioning the 79 Pirates without talking about the family. Like
yeah,
it,
and they
not,
actually put that on the dugout, like where it would
did
say
they?
the family. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and he came up with that. That's pretty cool.
And like too, like remember the I was looking for it this morning, was my old 1979 pillbox hat. And my
Yeah,
mom is so very used to give people
the
Stargell
stars.
stars.
Yeah.
Like if you did something like hit a home run, stole a base, pitched a good game, you would get a Stargell star. And my mom actually put some of the Stargell stars on my hat. So I don't know where that went. Probably the landfill, but my loss, I guess. He had the most home runs actually of any player in the 1970s with 296. He had a career batting average of 282. He just a great hitter. And 7-time All-Star, 2-time National League home run leader. And he's the only player to ever win the NL Most Valuable Player Award and the NL Championship MVP award and the World Series MVP. So like he swept the whole thing. He was the MVP of the Championship Series, the MVP of the World Series, and the MVP of the National League all in one season.
Oh wow.
So,
No one else has ever done that.
according to Wikipedia. So,
Wow, that's pretty amazing. Yeah,
yeah.
that's quite the see. Boy, that would be an interesting argument. Uh, like who had the best season, the best single season
Of a pirate. Yeah.
of or of any Pittsburgh athlete, right? You'd have to put him at the somewhere near the top of that list, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And especially it ended with a championship, too. That's
Right.
like kind of the cherry. Wasn't there a year Terry Bradshaw was NFL MVP and they
Same
won
year.
the Super Bowl?
Yeah, I think it was
Was it
either it
79?
was either 78 or 79, yeah.
Because that
So,
was the year that they won. Well, we won everything, well, except for the Penguins. But
right, right.
yeah, and that was the cover of Sports Illustrated with both them on on the cover.
Yeah, the
Terry
the
Bradshaw and Willie Stargell.
yeah, because Sports Illustrated always did their sportsmen or sportswomen of the year, and that was 79. It was Stargell and Bradshaw.
So some personal memories, like I said, and I'm sure Tim did too. We would always pretend to be, you know, Willie's Willie Stargell in our backyard. And like I said, I struck out a lot, so I had that. I was actually at his retirement game in 1982. I did forget I did attend that. I would have been 6 years old, 7 years old. Yeah. So I was at that game. It was pretty cool. He was still one of my favorites. Um, and when he retired, he did have the dubious honor of having the most strikeouts in Major League Baseball history. But since that is thank goodness for Reggie Jackson, Mr. October. Talk about a guy who's clutch. He actually did strike out the most. So, and he's all the way down to 10th on that list, behind people like Sammy Sosa, A-Rod, Cabrera, the aforementioned Andres Galarraga. Jose Canseco has a couple more than him. So
Yeah, all guys that literally
yeah.
swung for the fences, and when you do that, you're going to strike out sometimes, and that's like you said to your point about backing it up, right?
Yeah.
You'll take that if you're hitting all those home runs.
Well, I'm looking at the guys on this list. Really, him and Reggie Jackson are probably the two most clutch out of all those people. Now all-time home runs. I got a lot of my information from a book that I've had since I was a kid, and obviously the stuff on Willie Stargell hasn't changed a whole lot or at all since Willie hasn't played baseball since 1982. But the home run hitters list sure has, Tim. And Willie Stargell, and when they printed this book, and it had to be like late 80s, early 90s, I think Stargell was like, probably top 10 home run hitter. And now he ranks, he is down at 32. He's actually tied with Stan Musial. Adrian Beltre and Fred McGriff have more home runs than him. Like people you wouldn't think of. Cabrera has more. Ernie Banks. Mickey Mantle. Jimmy Fox wasn't Jimmy Fox the National League season leader, I think, until McGuire?
Yeah, I think he had 59 one year.
Yeah.
Don't quote me on that, but some huge number like that.
Here's another guy who stuck around forever, has more home runs than you think. 569, Rafael Palmeiro. Was that guy good? I mean, he certainly hit a home runs.
He was another steroid guy. I remember he was the guy that was wagging his finger and at the Senators or whoever, and then it came out that he was one of the steroid guys. So a bunch of the guys that are in front of him on that list are from the steroid era, and
Reggie Jackson obviously isn't. Mike Schmidt is legit. Yeah. I don't know. Did David Ortiz? I don't think was ever. Right. They never said he was doing steroids. I don't know. He didn't look like he was doing steroids.
Yeah. I mean, again, like that's a whole another debate about who was doing it, who wasn't.
Well, it wasn't illegal at the time.
Wasn't illegal at the time. So were they cheating? Were the pitchers doing it too? So it kind of evened out. Again, it's like baseball.
This is the whole stupidity of it all, Tim. Is number 4 on this list is Albert Pujols with 703 home runs, right?
Yeah.
Do you know he used an illegal bat for half his career?
Right.
So, like, what does that mean? Like, and because baseball will do that. I'm like, oh, this bat's illegal now. But what about me? Oh, well, you can use it since you're grandfathered in. Well, I don't know why nobody cries and whines about that record, Doesn't that taint the record since he was basically using an illegal bat all those years?
I mean, and Babe Ruth never had to face any black pitchers, right? He never had to face Satchel Paige or any of those guys. So, like, you could just go up and down the list of. That's why I said you really have to.
Well, Jim Thome has 612 home runs. I didn't realize Jim Thome had over 600 home runs.
Yeah.
Because it used to be like that big drop off, like between like Willie Mays and Babe Ruth. Remember that? It used to be like that big area where nobody was. And now there is a bunch of people in that.
Yeah.
Between, well, I guess not a bunch, 2 people, Pujols and Rodriguez, A-Rod. So I can't believe Pujols finished his career with 700 home runs. Well, I can. He was a really good player.
Yes.
Quotes about Willie Stargell. This is by other people. Don Sutton. Don Sutton is in the Hall of Fame finally, right? They finally voted him in, right?
I believe so.
I remember that was an argument for years. But about Stargell, he doesn't just hit pitchers; he takes away their dignity. Maybe I don't know. I don't know if that was Don Sutton who gave up that home run out of Dodger Stadium that still hasn't landed. But another good quote: Willie was our crutch. Anything you needed, any problem you had personally or in baseball, he took the burden. That was former teammate Bill Robinson. Pops, I remember him handing out stars to everyone. He was an outstanding player. That was Mets manager Bobby Valentine. I always remember the grace with which he treated my brother and my father when they would visit the locker room. Always kidding around. He really was this gentle giant. Former teammate Dave Gusty. So once again, like class act all around, leadership, just and he wasn't like a yelling, like one of those guys that has to yell and stuff. He just was kind of like a calm, steadying leader who was, backed it up with his home runs, but he would, set you in line if he had to. So
The way he really endeared himself to the people of Pittsburgh too, just the way he always talked, right? He's the one that had that quote about coming through the Fort Pitt Tunnel for the first time. He talked about, you read that quote, Steve, at the beginning about Pittsburgh being a working class town, and he just always talked like that. He was always so deferential and respectful to, what Pittsburgh was. He was never above, especially back then. I mean,
yeah, it's so funny. He experienced the same racism that Willie Mays did. And you look at like the two different ways those people went, or even Barry Bonds. I'm sure Barry Bonds experienced some racism, but like it's like just so different,
yeah,
and why people. I mean, I guess people like Willie Mays, but I don't know. People, I'd say Willie Stargell is much more a fan favorite than at least around here.
sure. And again, like Pittsburgh back then was still such a blue collar working steel mill kind of town. And he just always like celebrated that and always tried to like identify with that, very humble, like you said, not like he was like the star baseball player and and these peons from the mill were coming out to watch him. He never made anybody feel like that. I think that's another reason why people just gravitated to him.
So, his number 8 was retired in 1988. Hey, that's a lot of eights. Like we said before, he threw out the last pitch at Three River Stadium. And I don't know where he ranks in Pirates all-time players. I mean, do you put Clemente, Honus Wagner, Willie Stargell? Do you put him above Barry Bonds? He hit more home runs as a Pirate than Barry Bonds.
I'd probably put him above Barry Bonds just because of A, the time that Barry Bonds was here, and B, the winning a championship. I mean, I'm sorry, that matters. It really matters. And it's one thing if you're, the guy that really performed well, but the team just never came together, or they never put a team around you, like the Larry Fitzgerald kind of guy.
Yeah.
But it's another thing when, you just totally didn't do it when you had the chance, and Willie Stargell did. So I'd put him above Barry Bonds.
Yeah, so he has the most home runs by a Pirate since obviously played his whole career. Nobody's hit more than 475 as a Pirate. I don't think anybody has a chance to catch him even. I mean, McCutchen went and played for so many. I don't know how many home runs Andrew McCutchen has, Tim. How many does he have?
200 something, I think, but don't quote
That
me on
sounds
that.
right.
But like you said, that those weren't all hit with the Pirates, so he's not going to catch them.
Let's see here. His home runs are 300. He actually 307. So
Okay,
but he's not a power hitter though. So he can hit for power, but I always thought he hit more for average, and he was a very good fielder too, and another good person. But the second most home runs by a Pirate is some guy named Ralph Kiner, who we could finish in last without or with, but he has 300. So that's why even though McCutchen has more home runs, those, like we said, some of those were with Philadelphia and other teams, I'm sure. like I said, 71, he had a bad postseason. 79, he had that incredible postseason. He actually ended up batting 400 with 3 home runs, 7 RBIs. Two of those RBIs were in Game 7, so that's huge. And brought a fifth World Series to the old Pittsburgh Pirates there against a pretty good Baltimore team. I think they had. Was that the team with all the 20-game winners? Or
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Well, and we talked about all those great National League pitchers. Probably the best American League pitcher of that era was probably Jim Palmer, and he
yeah,
played for the Orioles. So
yeah, and McGregor, and yeah,
yeah,
they had some pretty good players. Just to finish it up, like I said, one of my favorite Pirates of all time, class act, good guy. Just love to watch him play. I mean, even though I was pretty young, so that's a pretty young, early childhood memory. And what say you, Tim, on $1? What's his real name? I know I texted it to you.
Wilver
Wilver
Darnell Stargell or
Star,
something like that.
yeah, Wilver Darnell Stargell.
Yeah,
Last comment on Wilver Darnell Stargell.
yeah, obviously an all-time great. I mean, how many people in this city get a statue? And he's one of the guys that has a statue. And
Well,
I
he's no
think,
Richie Pilon, that's for sure.
well, no, but I mean, he's still pretty good.
Yeah.
And I wonder too, Steve, if his legacy is enhanced by the fact that the Pirates haven't won anything since he was here, right? Kind of like Joe Namath's legacy in
Yeah.
New York is enhanced by the fact that the Jets never won anything after him, and I just wonder if that's kind of, not that Stargell's not deserving of it. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying I wonder if that kind of enhances or takes that legacy in a different direction, because when you don't have anything to fill the void in all those years, you tend to just look back on who was the last guy to lead you to the glory, land, and that was Willie Stargell.
Yeah, and I have a hard time, like, with all the other guys that have more home runs than him. Like, where does he rate, like, among the all-time greats in baseball? I still think he's up there with a Reggie Jackson or who did Ortiz was pretty clutch too for the Red Sox. So he's kind of like one of those guys, and it's tough with, like, all the inflated numbers to know. He certainly struck out a lot. He did strike out a lot, but a lot of these other guys did too. So
Yeah, like we said, you really have to. You can't. It's really hard to compare Willie Stargell with David Ortiz. It was just totally different eras, totally different roles, totally different
like
uh,
ballparks, even.
ballparks. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
that's why it's so hard to make those comparisons.
Well, Willie was definitely my favorite. No slight on any of those other guys, and a good person to boot. And I had a lot of fun talking about him today. One of my childhood heroes. So thank you for listening. Check us out on all your podcast streaming things. I use Spotify. Spotify's great. There's a bunch of other places you can check us out too.
Check us out on Facebook or Twitter if you want to connect with the show.
We've been getting a lot of great comments on Facebook. We really appreciate that. Keep them coming. And just thank you for tuning in, and thanks for all the support. And word of mouth works too, so don't forget about that. And have a great one, and we'll talk to you next time. God bless.